All right. Welcome, Professor Gerda Pujol. Welcome. This will be an orientation class, and so what we're going to cover today are just logistics of the course, and uh, there are many ways of doing that. What I thought we would do, and I posted in the chat. Let me go over the survey results from last week's academic activity. As you know, right, UCF requires an academic activity. So I went ahead and did part of that academic activity was a survey. So we'll go over the results as I use the results to help design the survey. I'm sorry, to help design the syllabus. Then after we go over the survey results, I'll go ahead and talk about, go over the syllabus and the mechanics of the course. You'll see it'll be a very user-friendly course. And then I will conclude by giving you a preview of our first substantive class, the first lab. I just want to let you know here off the bat that this is a course is designated RA, which means reduced seating adaptive learning. And sometimes it's called the real courses. I don't know why it's called the real courses, but what that means is we have an orientation class and then 5 in-person meetings. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the in-person meetings completely optional and provide a Zoom option and record the Zooms for those of you, for whatever health reasons or other things that may come up, aren't able to come in person. I just want to throw that out there up front. So let's go ahead and look at our survey results. You may also know that as I was getting on, by the way, thank you for giving me a few extra minutes to start today's section, as I had some technical difficulties that I was trying to work out. If for whatever reason we become disconnected, I do have a backup device, and that backup device, I won't be able to do a screen share, but I can at least finish the class. But I do want to do a screen share and show you the results of the survey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up that survey right now, and this is what we did for our academic activity. And I'm going to go ahead and let me just see where that is tucked away under quizzes. Now, these are graded surveys, so you get, participation points. And in this case, this is worth towards your academic activity. But any response is correct. You get points for however you answer. All right, so I think I have, I think I pulled it up there. So I will go ahead now and do a screen share, and then you can follow along the survey results. This was just a 5-question survey. Introductory. I get your feedback about the various aspects. So let's go ahead and look at survey statistics, and just check out what the class thinks about various things that I was asking about. So these surveys are designed to get a like a public opinion survey. And all right, it's still loading. As you know, we have a fairly large class. It's about almost 800 students spread out over 5 sections. And so let me go ahead here, and here I was asking what the preference is. So this is what we're just talking about. The preference here is 45% Zoom, 55% in person. You can see that's fairly evenly divided. Zoom has a lot of convenience. In person has certain intangibles, right? So what I'm going to do, and I'll talk about the syllabus, is I've decided anyways, the long COVID, there's all kinds of strains. I've decided I'm not going to make attendance mandatory at all, as long as you either attend or attend the Zoom, or watch the recording. I decided to do that just to put people's health front and center. Until we, there's also controversy about the efficacy of the vaccines, et cetera. Masks, of course, are no longer required. So I think just out of the abundance of caution. So hopefully I'll be able to, since the class is almost evenly divided, satisfy most students' preferences there. But I'll talk more about the course when we do when we look at the syllabus. So just so you can see what the class thinks about Zoom versus in person. We're going to have, let's see. Oh, this is, does the class prefer a final exam, the traditional, where you go to the testing center, or a final project? You can see here the results were much more decisive in favor of a final project. This is why, and as I'll go over in the syllabus, this is why then we will be assigning a final project. Personally, I think the final project is the best way to go. I'll be opening that final project on the first week of November, and it will be due the first week of December. So you have a full 4 weeks to write a 5-page report. I think that's much better in that you control your own destiny. You don't have to memorize a bunch of stuff that maybe you're going to forget later, and the way I've designed the final project is that something that could be useful to you in your career. So I'll talk more about the final project in a little bit. So there you get some sense of the class preference. Had those results been closer, that would have put me in a difficult spot, but it's pretty overwhelming, 31 to 69%. Here, I always look to out of just curiosity here, since my wife is an attorney and I myself am a law professor and licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and in the United States Supreme Court, among other places. I always want to know who, anybody, how many of you know a lawyer personally. And here we have sort of 41, 59% breakdown. So most of the class, I may be the first lawyer that you'll be meeting, and at some length. I'm humbled by that, and I will use this opportunity to give you a fair and balanced introduction to the legal and ethical environment of business, which is what this course is about. Here we have the textbook. I just want to let everybody know this survey was more of a public service announcement that, I was looking at the statistics. Most of the class went with the first day program. So you got a very nice, good discount on the textbook. Some of you may have older editions, which is perfectly fine. And the rest of you, I do have multiple copies on the library reserve desk. You can check them out for an hour so that you can always prepare for your quizzes and discussion posts and follow along. So that'll be the only really required thing from the course. Finally, the theme, and I've already posted these results to the homepage of the course. What I've decided to do is basically devote most of this course to the founding of Facebook, and then Facebook or Meta, as it's called now, the way it does business and how the law applies and all the ethical dilemmas that a big company like Facebook or Meta faces today. But I will say some, you can see here, let me show you the results here. You can see about a third of the class liked Tiger King. So I'll devote one of the modules to Tiger King, and about 12% are as intrigued as I am by the President John F. Kennedy and the Kennedy assassination and the famous Zapruder film that actually, is the single most important piece of evidence, or perhaps the most important piece of evidence in that case. And that Zapruder film has generated a lot of fascinating legal issues. So I'll talk about, in one of the modules, I'll talk more about that piece of evidence as well. And it'll give us a chance to look at how the law works in terms of evaluating evidence and inferences we can draw from evidence, and also disputes about ownership. In this case, who owns this film, which has a huge historical value. So these are the survey results. What I'll do now is I'll pull up the syllabus. I'll go to the homepage. I've just posted it. Again, I had the syllabus informed by the results of the survey. And what I'll do in this orientation class is go over the survey go over the survey was just to, satisfy everybody's curiosity, let everybody know why I made the design choices I made in the syllabus, so that you can see that I was trying to respond, as efficaciously as possible to, if you will, the popular will. And let's go ahead and jump into the syllabus. And let's see here. I've posted it earlier today. And I'll go ahead and update that. Let's go ahead and jump in here. And actually, I think I already have it up. Well, let's see if it goes in here. Actually, let me end the screen share. Sometimes this takes a long time to load. I already have it up on my desktop. So what I will do is I will pull it up on my the version I have on my desktop, and then go ahead and reinitiate the screen share. By the way, as part of the academic activity last week, also everybody did introductions. I've read most of those. I've responded to a few, and I will read the remainder of them. If you have, hold on, let me find the screen share here. If you have, if you completed it by the deadline, you'll get full credit. I've just, but it will remain open as per university guidelines until the last day of the semester. All right, here is my Zoom. Let's go ahead and jump into a screen share. Also, I want to apologize. Some of you emailed me. For some reason, the default was set to 11:59 a.m. and I meant, of course, 11:59 p.m. The latest possible time that I'm allowed to do a deadline on web courses. And so once I caught the error, I updated it and I gave everybody full points. If for whatever reason you have points deducted and you completed it on time before midnight, of August 26th, let me know. I'll be more than happy. It's my mistake. Anytime I make a mistake, I'll go ahead. It's a large class, so mistakes will be made. And so, we're more than happy to, correct any mistakes we make. All right. There's a train in the background, so we may get a train horn here. So I may have to speak up a little bit, even though we're in a Zoom format here. So as you can see here, I have some really cool images I was able to lift from the internet. This picture of Mark Zuckerberg with the word hacker, I think it said hacker, dropout, CEO. And I think the movie, The Social Network, sort of shows that progression. I believe this was from, I'm trying to remember if it was Forbes or I forgot the name of the publication, but it was a national publication. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg is very well known. I have some other stuff here. I have sort of the upside. I have I've always wondered, why doesn't Facebook have a dislike button? You know what I mean? It's like Facebook now has gotten a lot of negative publicity. Even though Instagram is much more popular than Facebook, as most of you know, right? Instagram is owned by the same parent company. Now it's called Meta Inc., that owns Facebook. So, whether you like it or not, you've got to deal with Mark Zuckerberg one way or the other, because you're probably if you're not on Facebook or you use Facebook sparingly, you're probably on Instagram or use Instagram more frequently. And so you're going to have to deal with Mark Zuckerberg. He also, of course, the parent company also owns WhatsApp, a very popular texting, platform. So I think this was a good choice. And I personally think it's as we'll see in the labs, I personally, you can see here's a scene from the movie, the face mash scene. And in fact, at the end of the class, when I give you a preview of our next, of our first lab, our first substantive class, we're going to talk about face mash. Face mash really raises some interesting legal and ethical issues that I think are very relevant today. So I've also included here a couple of frames from the famous Zapruder film, and also sort of a screenshot of the one of the images from the Tiger King series. And so the two main protagonists there, Carol Baskin and Joe Exotic, that still are in the headlines, if you will, although perhaps less frequently. So let's go ahead and jump in. What I've done is I've provided sort of here of a description. And what the description is just to show, I think, a good way of understanding law and ethics, or the legal and ethical environment of business. We could do it, the traditional way, or we could use popular culture to understand. And frankly, I'd rather have fun doing this. I'd rather use popular culture as a way of understanding the main legal and ethical environments of business. So that's sort of, if you will, it's just a way of getting your interest and showing you how the things that we're going to learn about relate to some of the things that you may already be familiar with, right? Who here doesn't use social media? I'm not asking you if you like social media, but we all have to engage with social media, you know what I mean? And social media has both good and bad aspects to it, Tiger King is a more, unusual and eclectic group of characters, but I really like Tiger King, especially for students who are not from the United States. I think what a better way of sort of appreciating the beauty, if you will, of American culture and just how crazy everything is in the United States by looking at these private zookeepers. And so it turns out that because Joe Exotic was prosecuted for murder for hire, we can actually use it also to study the legal process. And with the Zapruder film, like I said a little bit earlier, it raises some interesting issues, right? This is a very valuable historical artifact. It's a very important piece of evidence, right? In terms of, was there a conspiracy to assassinate President John F. Kennedy? Still a very controversial question, but perhaps of all the conspiracy theories out there, it's probably the one that has the most, believers. So, who owns a piece of historical evidence? And this raises larger questions about ownership. You really can't have private enterprise without private property. And so, so the Zapruder film, I think, is a good way of understanding one important aspect of the legal environment. Now, what I have here is sort of a description of how the modules work, but I broke it down in more detail here. Oh no, actually, here is the course schedule. Let me. I guess we'll do the course schedule first. Here, by the way, is a still from the movie. This is considered one of the most beautiful cinematic scenes of the 21st century. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's, probably the all-time best movie is The Godfather, part 1, part 2. We could debate which is the better Godfather movie. We could debate Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart, we could debate film noir, we could debate French cinema. But this scene where, the character of Eduardo Saverin, played by Andrew Garfield, right, writing this chess ranking equation on the on Zuckerberg's dorm window is really one of the most beautiful parts of the movie. And we'll say more about that equation actually in the next lab when we focus on face mash. But here is the schedule. Now, what I've decided to do here is these classes are supposed to be in person and attendance is supposed to be required. You know what I mean? I think that is insane while we're in the middle of a pandemic. And while thankfully, there's been a significant reduction from about half new infection rates from last year. The death rate is also half of what it is from last year. But that's relative, I'm looking at this, my base is that, there should be 0 infections or 0 deaths, or we should be looking at regular flu. COVID is still, I just want to throw it out there, I think it's still a very serious, thing. And I think the most responsible thing here is to give everybody a choice as to whether you want to come in person or whether you prefer a Zoom. Now, what I've done here is the Thursday section, I think it's section 5, will be the Zoom option for those of you who prefer, is live Zoom. I'm always going to record my live Zoom. So even if you can't make Thursday's section for whatever reason, you're in section 1, you signed up for this time, you'll still be able to watch the recording and not be penalized. So, you know what I mean? I just want to throw that out there. But this is the schedule, and you can, also technically, you're supposed to only attend your section. But, I don't really care what section you show up. I just want you to show up, whether you watch the recording, whether you go watch a live Zoom, or whether you're able to join me in person. I am supposed to do this in person, and I'm only doing that just so that, you know what I mean? I comply with university guidelines. And so you choose how you prefer, to attend the labs, and I'll be, no penalty, whatever your choice is. I want to give you freedom in that respect. And so you can attend whatever section you want on whatever day, What I do for the class activities, and I'll explain this, I think 2 pages down, is I will do a class survey But I'll show you when I do the preview for our first class, lab. I'll show you how it's going to work. And all I'm going to do, like I did for the academic activities, I'm going to post a survey, and I'll let you do the survey, just on web courses. If you can't make the class in person, it'd be perfectly fine. So you can do the survey and get your class participation points by doing, the web course survey that I'll do for each of the labs. But this is if you want to come in person or if you want to do a live Zoom. This is the schedule, and boom, you can choose whatever dates, whatever sections, whatever works best for you. I think that's the way to go here. You know what I mean? Last I checked, we're still in America. People are still free to do with it. So let's just do this. Let's just be flexible with this, given all of the health concerns that are going on. I think that's self-explanatory. I'll have Q&A at the end. Anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns? I also have a couple of TAs moderating the chat. So if you have anything, throw it in the chat as well. But I think this is the most fair way to proceed, until we can really say that, health concerns have been addressed. So that's your schedule there. Now, there's no section 3 because I'm actually supposed to be teaching a class on Tuesdays from 6 to 8:50, and the registrar put a conflict. And so section 3 has been closed. So I won't be doing any labs or anything like that. That's another reason why I want to be flexible, because sometimes that's just how it is. All right. The modules now that you know the schedule, right, of our 5 labs. If you're in the orientation class now or watching this recording, what are we going to be doing in each of these 5 classes? And so what I have done here is here, by the way, I have a nice screenshot of Harvard's honor code. We'll see this in our very next class when we look at sources of law. What status do these kind of private codes have, in terms of their legal status, but the modules, you already looked at module A, that's just the academic activity. That's just week 1. You'll notice I kept my foot off the gas. We're still summer, I want to give everybody.
Your socks, no.
Oh, hold on here. You may have to mute yourself if you accidentally unmuted.
I'm wearing my Snoopy fall socks.
What I'm going to do is
pumpkin spice latte season.
Here. All right, good. All right, sorry about that. Hey, that happens. It's Zoom, but here are the modules. What you can see is so we have 5 labs. So I thought, just to make it as simple and user-friendly as possible, I'm just going to open up one module for each of our labs. And in fact, just earlier today, right before class, I opened module B for our first class, which will be 2 weeks from today. So I'll just go over that module at the end of class to show you what the modules will look like. All of your supplementary readings and all of your film clips and all of the assignments will be in each of the modules, and it'll be open for 2 weeks. So yeah, plenty of time to do all the assignments. So module B, what we'll do there are the main sources of law. What do we mean by law? And so this is geared especially for international students who may be familiar with the fact that the United States is a so-called federal system. So we have a dual sovereign, we have 50 state governments, a multiplicity of local and municipal governments. And we have also, of course, the federal government. And then, of course, we have on top of all of that international law. In addition, there's something called natural law, which kind of refers to theories of ethics and morality. It's controversial, what is the relationship between law and morality? But I'll throw that out there. We'll talk about natural law just to introduce you to what it is, there's also something called private ordering, like Harvard's honor code. You know what I mean? All organizations, almost all business firms have these kind of employee codes and mission statements. And what is their legal status? So we'll take a look at that as well. We'll take a look at what we mean by law and how it is that lawyers, for example, distinguish sources of law from, if you will, extra legal sources, and what that relationship is between the two. Now, we'll do that by focusing on that's a really big question. In fact, we could do an entire course just on the question of defining law. That is, what we're going to do though is we're going to take a look at the face smash instead. Let's look at an actual example of, in this case, a hacking incident, right? What I like about Face Mash is that hacking is such a significant problem today. So I thought that, Face Mash, it's basically, a primitive hack, to be sure, by perhaps today's standards, but it's nonetheless, unauthorized access, right, of Harvard's computers by a, college sophomore, Mark Zuckerberg. If you will, you could say this is the original sin of Facebook, right? Invading people's privacy. And so even now, you may have heard in the news, all of these social media websites, right, retain, and all of these cellular phone companies retaining your private personal data, right, and even sharing it with the authorities, without you even knowing about it, And so what is that all about? Why do we even have law if the government can just do whatever it wants with your data? Or if all of these private companies can do whatever you want with these data, and what happens, how do we define hacking? And so I think that Face Mash incident will be a great way to distinguish law, and the main sources of law from, if you will, extra legal sources. So I won't say more about that. Module C, that'll be lab number 2. And so what you do there, just go back into this, you can look at the schedule here. I should have an extra column here showing which of these classes are which of these modules, but I'll just say here, this is module B, here's module C, D, E, and then the next to last module over here. So you can choose, but module C is something called the common law. This is really, really important. These are the default rules that apply to all business firms. I think it's really, once you identify the main sources of law, the common law is the most important thing. Most legal environment courses don't really, they kind of teach the common law in separate units. What I want to do is just put it all together. So, the most important thing of our, of our legal tradition, which is this thing called the common law, which encompasses 3 important broad areas of so-called private law: contracts, property rights, and torts or injury law, accidents. And these are, like I said, the default rules that apply to all business firms, small and large. And so the common law, and also what's fascinating about the common law is that it has evolved over centuries. And it's one of the most unique things about US law that the United States is considered a common law country. So we'll see what that means. And to really understand the legal environment of the United States, you have to understand the background legal rules that apply as common law. And so that's what that module will be about. We'll look at property, contracts, and torts in that area. Module D, our third module, so this will be our third, or our third lab. I call it the law of ideas. This is what is often referred to as intellectual property rights. So it's a subset of property law, but to be honest with you, it's the most important subset of property law, period, period. And so what I do is I just have a whole separate module to intellectual property rights. This is basically, especially, it applies both to startups and also established, business companies. Whoever the next Mark Zuckerberg is, and, a company like Meta today, or Google, or whoever the next Google is going to be, but the law does allow you to assert ownership over your ideas or the expression of your ideas. And this is very important because it's how, basically, if your business model, doesn't contemplate intellectual property rights, I'm going to tell you right now, your business model is I don't want to say it's worthless, but it's small time, If you want to go to the big time, if you want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, you want to be the next Jeff Bezos, you want to be the next Elon Musk, you've got to focus on intellectual property. What are your ideas? And, how do I protect my ideas, legally speaking? And so, by the way, this is another great reason why I love The Social Network. because Mark Zuckerberg is going to be accused of stealing an idea. And the reality is he stole the idea. But this will give us a great opportunity to look at not just the ethics of stealing someone else's idea, but the legal ramifications. How is it that you protect an idea, legally speaking? So it'll give us a chance to compare and contrast law and morality. All right, our fourth and next to last lab is module E here, civil and criminal cases. You'll notice basically we're doing this almost at the very end, and I do that on purpose. When most people think of law, unless they're lawyers, but when most people think of law, you're probably thinking of going to court. You're probably thinking of the jury. You're probably thinking of, courtroom. That's how it's certainly portrayed in popular culture. In reality, most cases, and especially business cases, business disputes, business litigation, not all the time, but most of the time, most of these cases get settled out of court, never get to a jury, never decided by the judge. Now, there are exceptions. And we'll look at, that's what we're gonna do in that module. Rather than study, all the details and minutiae of the, of how a trial works, I'll mention that, we'll talk about that, but I'm gonna focus on the strategic choice of when a business should settle out of court and when a business should go to trial, take their chances with the jury. That's really, when we look at the legal environment today, that's really what it comes down to, a strategic choice between going to trial if you're sued or settling out of court. And likewise, if you have to sue somebody else, the same calculus will come into play. Also, all right, so we'll take a look at that. Also, I'll take a look at something called alternate dispute resolution, including mediation and arbitration. Here's where the Zapruder film is going to come into play. When there's going to be a dispute over the ownership of the film and over how much that film is worth, that home movie, it's going to go into arbitration. Also, The Social Network is very, very instructive here. They don't show it in the movie, but in real life, when Mark Zuckerberg settles out of court, the spoiler alert, he's going to settle all of his lawsuits with Eduardo Saverin, his business partner, and with the Winklevoss twins, the people he basically stole their idea from. That's gonna all be resolved through mediation. And that's actually very common today. Mediation and arbitration is one of the reasons why so many cases do settle out of court. So we'll take a look at that as well. Our last substantive module in our last lab, I've devoted it to something called corporate governance. It's basically how you do business, how you legally structure your business, and what are the legal consequences of those choices. And also business ethics, regardless of how you structure your company, legally speaking, do you have above and beyond the duties that the law imposes upon you, do you have any ethical duties beyond and above and beyond what the law requires? So that's going to be sort of modern corporate governance. And Facebook, I have to say, is a great choice in this regard because they're always going through some kind of controversy. Last time I taught this class, there was a whistleblower alleging that Facebook had knowledge that Instagram, had negative effects for the self-esteem of teenage girls. This caused a whole ruckus. There was a hearing in the House of Commons in the United Kingdom. There were hearings in the Congress in Washington, D.C., and Facebook took a lot of, perhaps deservedly so, got a lot of negative publicity. In fact, it was around this time that Facebook will rebrand into Meta Inc., and metaverse, of course, also raises some real deep issues about corporate governance. Also, I want to say one more thing that I love about Facebook. It's not in the movie because it's way more recent. But, even if you don't like Facebook, even if you don't trust Mark Zuckerberg, they have done some very innovative and very promising, I must say, even from a skeptic. And I do consider myself to be in the skeptic camp. But they have done some promising corporate governance models that no other company has even contemplated. So I want to share that with you as well. And then you can decide for yourself, is this a step in the right direction? Should we do more of this? Or is this just window dressing, you know, so-called greenwashing, for example, so-called, publicity, public relations, so I'll let you decide, but I'll show you what Facebook is doing now. And, that is quite innovative, and then you can decide for yourself if you think it's will have significant impacts and spread to other companies. Our last module, and I'll release the last module when we do the next to last module on corporate governance. The last module will be the final project. Again, don't freak out about that. What it will be is I will release there the guidelines for the final project, the rubric. I'll just give you the rubric, because what I want you to do, it'll give you 4 weeks to do your 5-page paper. And if you touch everything on the rubric, you get full credit. And what the rubric is, everything that we've studied in this course. So there'll be, what are the main sources of law that apply to the company? What is the most, the common law contract? What is the most valuable contract the company has? Law of ideas. What is the most valuable type of intellectual property that the company has? Civil and criminal cases. What's the most significant legal threat that company is facing? And finally, corporate governance, how does that company deal with business ethics, and how is that company structured? And so by the time we get to the last module, trust me, if you've watched all my videos or gone to my classes in person or do the live Zoom, whichever option you prefer, trust me, you'll be able to do the final project blindfolded, because you won't even need a textbook. You can have the textbook as a reference, but what you're going to do is you'll be able to tell me, you'll be able to answer all these questions, because I'm just going to ask you to apply what you've learned or what I've taught in each of these 5 previous 5 previous modules. It's 5 labs, 5 modules. And so, and what you'll do, one more thing is, again, consistent with my belief in freedom and choice, you'll be able to choose the company that you want to research. So if you want to work for Google, if you want to work for Disney, if you want to work for the commissioner's office in Major League Baseball, if you want to work for the Pittsburgh Steelers front office, if you want to work for Sony Entertainment, if you want to work for BMI, or some other record label, you pick whatever company you want to work after college, and then you write your report about that company. And my idea is that even when this class is over, you'll still get something out of the class. Maybe you can attach your report to your resume, and try to get a job at the company and show, dazzle them with all the knowledge you have about the company and how law and ethics interacts with the company. That not only will you be good at your job, but you have the big picture. So trust me, I think the class made the right choice about picking a final project. All right. In terms of materials here, I'm going to provide everything you need. The textbook, most of you already have it. If you don't have it, any edition is fine. If you want to get a used copy, or I have it available on reserve as well, if you don't mind, if you're physically on campus, and 1 hour should be enough. I'll only assign no more than 2 chapters per module per lab, so that you'll have plenty of time for all the reading assignments. So it'll be fair amount of a fair level of work. Movies, I do recommend, I'm not going to require, but I do recommend that you do see The Social Network. The only reason why I'm not going to require it is because it's no longer on Netflix. In fact, on August 31st of last year, it went off of Netflix. And so it used to be on Netflix for a few months, but then it is available, by the way, if you don't mind paying, I think it's like $3.99 Amazon Prime. It's a rental, right? So you have like 48 hours or whatever it is to watch it. I think it's a very good movie. It's about a 2-hour movie. I very much enjoyed the movie. But I'm not going to require you to watch it, because I will put in every module. I'll show you the relevant scenes from the movie that are relevant to that module. So, same thing with the Zapruder film. It's very graphic. It actually, shows, and there's enhanced versions out there, it shows an assassination, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a terrible, terrible film, but it's also a historical value. But I'm not gonna require anybody to watch the Zapruder film. And then finally, Joe Exotic, again, you don't have to watch the show, because when I do talk about Joe Exotic and all his stuff, all his legal problems, I'll show you, I'll just share with you the relevant film clips, in each of the modules when he pops up, you know what I mean? He'll only pop up once or twice, all right. So the one important thing here is you're all on Zooms, you all have internet, but internet is, I mean, this really goes without saying, but it is essential because all of the assignments will be via web courses, so you want to have internet so you can access the modules and access the recorded lectures and access, any of the assignments that are in the modules. But, I'm sure that's not going to be a problem. Ironically, I have to admit, UCF probably has terrible internet, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of the ironies here, but by and large, the internet's always up and running, even on UCF. Assignments. Oh, okay. This is important here. Here's how I struck about. Here are 3 of the frames from the Zapruder film. Speaking of it, you can see the president there, Kennedy. You can see his wife, Jacqueline Onassis. She later remarried. This is sort of like this is when the first shot was fired, first or second. There's some controversy about that, but the film gets even worse. It's a home movie. It's very graphic. All right. Here's how I've structured the class. Basically, every, and actually this will become obvious when I do a preview for our next class, for our first lab. Every module will have 3 assignments. A survey that normally when attendance was required, I would do the survey in class. We would have eye clickers and all that, but I'm not doing that because of COVID. So you can do a survey at your own convenience. Open book quizzes, short quizzes and discussion posts, just so that, to reward students for doing the reading. And finally, the end of semester final project, which I just talked about. So each of these are worth 1/3, and that adds up to 99%. The last 1% of your grade was last week's academic activity. So, if you missed it, it's still open. You can still get it done for partial credit. It's not gonna affect you that bad. If you did it, that's awesome, because sometimes you need that 1%, to round up your grade. That's why I do it that way, because if you've done the academic activity, then I can take into account, rounding up your grade. If you're close to an A or a B+ or whatever, that's what the academic activity is for. At least the way I structure the course. Finally, here, the last part, grading scale. So here's a nice little poster from the Social Network, one of my favorites. Well, I actually love this movie, and this is not my favorite scene, but one of my favorite scenes, where they're doing the hackathon, but here basically we're just following the College of Business, which means that there's no minus grades, but all of you are already familiar with that. What I've done here, that novels, I've translated it into points, what I mean? Since each of the three main parts of the course, right? The surveys will add up to 240 points. The quizzes and discussion points combined will add up to 240 points. And the final project will add up to 240 points. As long as you get everything done by the deadline, you should be fine. It's open book. So again, you should be fine. I just want to reward you for applying, what you've learned. This is what, if you want to know what the points, how they cash out in terms of your grade, it's all there. Finally, just in terms of course policies here, and I have a little Tiger King collage. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of Tiger King. I have never seen that. I mean, Tiger King is the most crazy group of people that I've ever seen, but also some of the most amazing people, and also some of the most evil people in terms of how the animals were treated, but also you saw sort of the best of mankind and the worst, because you saw kind of people, abusing animals or using animals for profit, but also you saw people who really loved and cared for the animals, So anyways, I thought Tiger King was pretty amazing, and Joe Exotic, just a fascinating character. And so we'll get a chance to, I'll say a few words about him throughout the semester. But here, basically, I discovered Chegg in the pandemic. All of these questions are basically available online. I don't like doing it, but I do, if you're going to use Chegg, basically, don't use your Knight's email, because I I do request that Chad give me any email addresses involving any of my test questions. So we've done this before, and this has been you don't want to be in that position where, you know what I mean, you have an academic integrity issue. So the idea is not design the course like you don't need to use Chegg, frankly. You know what I mean? You're wasting your money if you're using Chegg, because everything is open book. You know what I mean? Everything is we're using popular culture to enjoy the class. So email policy, it's a large class, so it takes me a couple of days for my TAs and I to respond. All my TAs are graduate students in the Masters of Science of Accounting program, so they're super busy. I'm, believe it or not, you know what I mean, professors, you may not think we're busy, but I'm presenting a couple of papers this semester, one at Mercer Law School and another one at the Southern Economic Association, and I'm writing a book. So so it's like we'll get to you, you know what I mean? But do email us, because sometimes if I make a mistake, I want to be able to fix it. Legal assistance, I'm not allowed. First of all, I'm not allowed to practice law in Florida because my law license is in a different state. And number two is, be conflict of interest because you're my student. So I have there the email for the student legal services, which is completely free. And those are Florida licensed attorneys that can help you with any of your legal questions. The makeup policy here is, I am strict about the deadlines, and because the class is so large, and because you have 2 weeks, I open up every module 2 weeks before. You really have like almost 3 weeks to do each of these set of assignments, as I'll show you. So it's plenty of time to do the assignment. So, and because we have such a large class, I don't want to invite people, if you ask for makeup, I'm not going to even respond to that. I'm just going to ignore it. It's in the syllabus, so there's no makeups there. I am strict about that. So, in part because I give you the freedom to do the assignments whenever you want. I don't assign a connect code. I let you use web courses. So, that's as far as my tolerance will go. Office hours, what I will do is they will be Wednesdays at 3:30. I have 3 sections, two of this class, and then graduate section today, 3 on Thursday. So Wednesdays I don't teach. So Wednesdays would be a good day to do office hours. I'll do them by Zoom, but I'm more than happy by appointment to do in person as well. SAS, I've gotten the registrations. What I normally do is I just, if a quiz takes 15 minutes, I just make it 30 for everybody. Just give everybody the extra time. You know what I mean? I don't want to deal with, have a large class, almost 800 students. I'm not going to, I'm just going to give everybody the extra time, because it's open book. And so, but if you have any special concerns, let me know, and, we'll be more than happy to accommodate, within reason, of course. So that goes for the syllabus. You can see the course, I'll open it up for Q&A at the end, but what I decided to do is to end today's orientation, let me go ahead and show you our next module. You know what I mean? Because our first class will be, lab number 1, not next Tuesday, but 2 weeks from today. And so at this time, if you choose to stay in this section, so let me just go ahead and pull up the module, and I'll show you how to do that. And what I'll do is I'll update the homepage of the course and put a link to the module there as well. I think I forgot to do that. So I'll do that at some point tonight, because I still have 2 more sections. So let's go ahead and do a screen share here, and let's jump in here, and we'll go into our.
Hey, Professor, sorry to interrupt. We just have a couple questions regarding the class email. Did you want that going through our web course emails, or are you going to drop a? Oh
yeah, I lost the Gmail password, so I don't want to create a new Gmail, because I have like one for spring, one for fall, one for summer. So yeah, just use the class email for now, the Canvas. So yeah, to email me, I think what you do is just go in here, you know what I mean? And then you can just email me there, and it goes to my email. The TAs have access to it as well. And so I've been responding to them so far. Later on, I'll make a plan, but yeah, so just use this email functionality for and technically that's what we're supposed to do, because of the FERPA law, Federal Education Rights Privacy Act. So it's like what we want to do here is we'll just go by the book, and we'll use the course, within the Canvas modality here. So it's like so good question. Anything else?
I think I've covered most of them in the chat, so we're good for now.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. Yeah, sorry about that. I lost the password to that. I normally have a dedicated Gmail, and so I got to figure that out. But for now, we'll use this one. And last thing I want to just give you a preview of our next class, right? You've seen the syllabus. I made it super user-friendly. Basically, we meet 5 times. Flexibility in how you want to come to class, in person, Zoom, recording, and then 1 module for each of the class, plus a module for the final project, which I will release when I release the next to last module. I have 4 weeks to do that assignment. So here we go. I'll put a link on the homepage for the, for the module for the next class. But what you want to do, you may have already seen module A. Here's module B. What I've done is, and I do this because the first day program is, I have included copies of the textbook chapters that I've assigned for lab number 1, only because it used to be back in the day, the textbook was like hundreds of dollars, over 100, like almost 200, 150, some crazy amount of money. And the financial aid wouldn't come until like the 3rd week of class. Now with the first day program, it's pretty cheap, but if you missed it or don't want to do the reserve, I will, in this module only, give a courtesy copy of what I've assigned in the textbook. I also have assigned, so by the way, all the modules are organized this way. Any supplementary readings, relevant film clips, and then since we'll be talking about state and local law, and since we'll be talking about federal law, and since we'll be talking about international law and natural law, I'll give you examples of each that are specifically relevant to FaceMash, to the website, the illegal website that Mark Zuckerberg created in the fall of 2003 while he was still at Harvard. And so that's what we're going to talk about. What I do want you to read, these are some film clips from the movie where Zuckerberg is creating FaceMash. You may want to check that out if you haven't seen the movie. It's, to me, the best part of the movie. It's also, to me, the most historically accurate part of the movie, because Jesse Eisenberg's voiceover of the Mark Zuckerberg is literally word for word from Zuckerberg's own blog in real life. So, we can debate, I also have a film clip here of Zuckerberg being asked about FaceMash back when he had to testify in Congress after the so-called Cambridge Analytica data breach scandal. You may recall back in April of 2018, there was a whole, all of this private Facebook data was given to political consulting firms, both in the United States and in the United Kingdom. And some observers believe that, and by the way, these political consulting firms then sent targeted Facebook ads and other type of social media ads to people based on this Facebook data. And because the 2016 presidential election, the data breach occurred in 2016, because all of this was, because the presidential election between Trump and Clinton was very close, and because the, like in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, Ohio, and because the Brexit referendum in the United Kingdom was also very close, 51, 49%, whether to leave the European Union or stay. A lot of people believe that those results were contaminated. You know what I mean? It's controversial because, who really changed their mind based on a couple of Facebook ads? But maybe some people did, right? Or maybe people went out to vote who wouldn't have voted otherwise, So we don't really know. But this was a huge controversy, and during those, it was joint hearings in the Senate and joint committee hearings in the House. Zuckerberg had to testify 12 hours over a 2-day period, and only one member of Congress asked Mr. Zuckerberg about FaceMash. So I've included that film clip in there. I think it's very illuminating to the kind of individual Mark Zuckerberg is, whether you like him or admire him or detest him or are suspicious of his motives. You can see how Zuckerberg in real life, what he has to say about FaceMash. Here you're going to see an example of state law, federal law, and international law as it applies to hacking. Finally, the last thing in the module, the most important thing in the module, are the assignments. Always will be at the bottom of each module. So there'll be an open book quiz for the module, right? There'll be a discussion post for the module, and there will be a survey for that first lab, and a graded survey, but any answer is correct. And what I will do is because we only have one class to cover the main sources of law, I will use the results of the survey to illuminate and explicate what the main sources of law are and how they operate, to something like face match. And answer the question is, did what Zuckerberg do, was it illegal? And if so, why didn't he get prosecuted or sued, right? Because that's going to be one of the most interesting aspects of the face match incident, in my opinion, is that what he did was completely illegal. But at the same time, he really didn't suffer any legal consequences, you know what I mean? And that does happen in real life, not all the times are bad actors caught. And even when bad actors are caught, they're not always punished. And so in the case of Mark Zuckerberg, we'll see that face match is a sort of an excellent illustration of this larger principle that the law is sometimes selective, you know what I mean, in terms of detecting illegal activities and then, prosecuting or, taking legal act, otherwise taking legal. And I'll explain why that happened in real life in the Zuckerberg case, and that will be illuminating for legal environment generally. All right, so you can see the module here. It looks like it's a lot of stuff. I don't mean to clutter you. This is stuff that I'm going to talk about when I give my lecture in lab number 1, and I go over the survey results in lab number 1. Just to see that when I talk about something, you can look it up. If it's not in the textbook, you can look it up. So I'll look at the law of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, state of Massachusetts, and we'll see, that it's really interesting that Mark Zuckerberg probably, did he break state law when he created face match? And you look at that law, and hacking is defined very narrowly. Mark Zuckerberg might have a good argument to say that he didn't break any local law, state law, when he created face match, as bad as face match may appear to you. The example of federal law, though, there's a federal anti-hacking law, very broadly worded. In fact, it's very controversial to this day, and there was a recent Supreme Court case interpreting the scope of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is the federal hacking law. There we're going to see that there's no question that Zuckerberg his behavior probably fell within the ambit of federal law. And then the question is going to be, why wasn't he prosecuted by the feds? International law, this may surprise you, but the United States did ratify an international treaty, a convention that was negotiated in Budapest back in 2004, called the Cybercrime Convention. And so there are some international implications. It's like UCF. There are students from all over the world at Harvard. And so theoretically, right, if Mark Zuckerberg, theoretically, he may have opened himself up to prosecution, at some other country's jurisdiction. I'll give you an example. I don't know how many of you know about the Middle East and the Kingdom of Jordan, and Queen Noor, the royal family of Jordan, but they've have, many members of the Jordanian royal family have gone and attended Harvard, you know what I mean? So what the International Convention does is basically makes it easier to extradite people who are accused of hacking. And so we'll look at what the conditions are, to get extradited under international law. And we'll also look at the international treaty raises some very interesting issues in terms of American free speech law, that it is considered an international cybercrime, for example, to post hate speech, on the internet. Whereas hate speech is, you can get fired for hate speech if you work for a private company, but hate speech is a legally protected category of speech, and the government cannot punish you for hate speech, And so this is one of the sort of the most interesting, what happens when there's a contradiction between international law and domestic law, as there is with the Cybercrime Convention. This has yet to be, this will eventually become a big issue, and will have to be resolved in the courts. So you can see with the assignments, the quiz, it's open book. It's based on these, two chapters from the textbook. And so, you can read your textbook, have it open. You can look up the answers. That's fine. I just want you to know, basic legal jargon, that's what that quiz is designed. So you understand sort of a little bit of the legal universe when we talk about sources of law. The survey, it's just again graded survey. Any answer is fine. I just want your opinion about face smash and other aspects of hacking. And finally, the discussion post. I will go over the discussion post. A short essay. I think it's basically a 3-part. Each one is like a paragraph, short paragraph, 100 words each. But basically, you're going to tell me after you read, the textbook, do you think face smash was illegal? And you look at the supplementary materials in the. Now, this is an open question because Zuckerberg was never prosecuted, right? Harvard could have pressed charges. They didn't. He could have been sued by some of the students whose pictures were posted without their consent. But that never happened. But give me your opinion. Do you think it was legal or illegal? I will answer that question in the next lab, and I'll give you the arguments both for and against Mark Zuckerberg, whether this was legal or illegal. You can actually make an argument both ways. I don't want to do it now because I'd give you the answer, but there's actually good arguments both ways. So I just want your opinion. Is face smash illegal? And the laws there are, the relevant materials will be in the module. Which legal right now. Number 2, again, just want your opinion, right? Even if you think that what Zuckerberg would do was illegal, or you think it's morally wrong to be posting people's pictures without their consent, what about free speech, right? What about and I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's more. I'm not saying it's right. It's okay to rank people based on their looks. You know what I'm saying? But why can't I rank people based on their looks, right? Why can't I create a website? Why can't I use these materials? You know what I mean? Because some small subset of the population, and to be honest with you, it wasn't small at all. This website spread like wildfire in just a few hours before it was shut down. So in fact, a lot of people at Harvard cared about who the so-called hottest student was. You know what I mean? So what happened to free speech? And so you give me your opinion. Does free speech, my freedom to create a website, should that trump the people's privacy rights, or vice versa? Should privacy rights trump people's free speech rights? Let me tell you, every single modern controversy today involving social media basically boils down to that critical question. When should privacy trump free speech, or vice versa? When should free speech trump privacy? Right. So I just want your opinion. There's no right answer there. That's why I do this, so that it's easier for me to grade. And finally, this is interesting. Zuckerberg, he wasn't suspended. Maybe he was admonished at Harvard. Their student conduct committee is called the Ad Board. If you see the Social Network, there's a very good scene in there describing what may have happened during that private, hearing. But the point is that we know for a fact that he was not suspended, was not expelled, but he probably was admonished. What an admonishment is that you basically get a warning. If you're ad boarded a second time, you are automatically expelled. By the way, this is important when you watch the movie, because if you do watch the movie, because when the Winklevoss twins try to ad board Zuckerberg in the spring of 2004 for stealing their idea, what that entails is that Zuckerberg, had he been ad boarded, he would have been automatically dismissed, But why wasn't Zuckerberg suspended? Think about it. Like today, if this happened, with the Me Too, woke, and all this stuff, I have no doubt in my mind. If you try to pull this stuff today, there's no doubt you're getting at the very least suspended, right? So why wasn't, if this is such a big deal, why wasn't Zuckerberg, why wasn't he punished, seriously, so I just want your opinion. Maybe because, you give me your opinion, maybe Harvard dropped the ball here. Maybe, you can give me whatever, and this is what it means to think like a lawyer. Think about if you had to represent Mark Zuckerberg before the ad board, or let's say he's sued by one of the fellow students for invasion of privacy, or let's say criminal charges are brought either at the state or federal level. I'll talk about all those scenarios in the first lab. How would you defend Mark Zuckerberg? And so I'll talk about that, and that's what a lawyer is kind of trained to do. even when the facts are against you, even when the law is against you, what do? You know, how do you defend somebody? And I will say, I'll end today's class by telling you it's probably the most fundamental bedrock principle of American law is that everybody is entitled to legal representation. Everybody is entitled to, to be legally defended, legally represented. And so, if you think about it, the reason why this is such a radical, the most important bedrock principle of American law is, I want you to go back to October 1946, Nuremberg, Germany. If you're a student of history, as I am, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Nazi war criminal trial that the Allies, the British, the Russian government, and the United States, when they tried the Nazi war criminals, even the Nazi war criminals were entitled to legal representation and to defend themselves. And in fact, a couple of those guys were acquitted, Albert Speer being the most famous among them, Hitler's architect, as he was called. And so even the Nazi war criminal, even the person accused of the most horrible crimes against humanity, were entitled to legal representation. So even someone like Zuckerberg, who did something, pretty bad with Face Smash, you could argue, even, he is entitled to the basic due process protection of being represented and trying to mount a defense. But how do you defend him? How do you defend the indefensible? That is what we'll talk about in the next lab. All right, with that, I hope you've enjoyed this orientation. As you can see, I'm just trying to put everybody at ease, give as much flexibility as possible so you can enjoy the course, learn at the same time, and take advantage to actually help your career when you get around to doing the final project. Pick a company that you actually want to work at. In the meantime, and it could be Facebook, I don't care, it could be even Facebook and the companies we talk about in this class. But the point is, I hope you'll, enjoyed the introduction. We'll do our first lab, in 2 weeks' time. And we'll start with Face Smash, we'll start with hacking, and we'll look at the main sources of law. With that, I've concluded the orientation class. I will now conclude the recording. However, I will stay on for questions and answers. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about any aspect of the syllabus, or any aspect of the course, or any aspect of the assignments, each module, by the way, all the modules will look just like that module, I'll give you any supplementary materials, any short film clips that I think might be relevant, and an example of that area of law that we're talking about from the movie The Social Network, or from Tiger King, or from the movie JFK about the the only criminal case to charge a conspiracy in the assassination of President Kennedy. So with that, let's go ahead and conclude the orientation. If you need to go somewhere, I won't be offended. The class is now over. I will now stop the share, by the way, and stop the recording.